Today I want to take a few minutes and make some comments about merit pay in our Catholic school systems. Now, it's been rather interesting to read some of the comments that have been posted online regarding whether merit pay is a good idea to begin with. Some interesting comments that I read, things like, well, maybe if they just raised the starting salaries, that would be enough. Things like, well, what about paying people for extra work? Catholic school teachers are intrinsically motivated. What about just saying goodbye to the weak teachers? What about other types of incentives? Teachers really don't teach for the money. Those are all great comments, and I want to try to address those and give you some things to think about. Number one, teachers in a Catholic school are teaching there because they want to teach there. Now, to say that teachers are intrinsically motivated in our schools would be, in my estimation, a little bit of a fallacy. Because I know too many schools and too many individuals who have been teachers in Catholic schools that have been less than stellar teachers and did the minimum amount to ensure that they got paid. We would love to think that everybody comes to our schools and we as administrators select the best and the brightest. The reality is sometimes if you're looking for a physics teacher or a reading teacher and it's suddenly the beginning of August, sometimes you wind up settling. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's real. We oftentimes don't have the luxury of getting those individuals that have done the most research, those that have the most experience. Why? Because we simply cannot afford a lot of those individuals. What we find is that we have highly energetic people that start with us. But as you'll see throughout the course of the next few courses that you'll be taking at Marymount, as teachers stay in the profession, their effectiveness oftentimes declines. Why? Because after you've been teaching the same subject material over and over again for 5, 10, 15, 20, or 25 years, you begin to lose a little bit of the edge. Not everyone. Because there are some teachers that are highly motivated and energized every day, and they might be teaching for 40 or 50 years. Unfortunately, I'm beginning to believe more and more that those are the anomalies. The other factors that we must consider when we look at compensation for our teachers overall is this concept of the fair and just wage. If I'm paying a new teacher $25,000 or $30,000 coming right out of college, and they're suddenly paying rent of perhaps $1,000 a month, and then they have a car payment, and don't forget they have to pay something for health insurance. Oh yes, let's not forget food. And well, what about clothes? What about sometimes the supplies that they wind up purchasing on their own for their classrooms? When you suddenly start looking at what teachers make, after you take out the cost for FICA, and when you start taking out the cost of insurance, the amount of money that's there begins to dwindle. But the problem that we have in most schools, whether it's a public school or a Catholic school, is we really can't afford to simply just paying everybody what we think they're worth. We simply do not have the funds. So over the years, people came up with an idea that used the business model and applied it to school. Now, some of you in your comments said, we're not a business. We're something different. I would love to sit here and tell you that that's the case. That we are above all the fray of business. The reality, and once you are the principal of a school, you will quickly learn that it is a business. It is a business that teaches children the values of our faith, but it is still a business. If we cannot pay the bills and pay our employees, we will simply go out of existence. Hence, as you saw early on in this course, schools are closing throughout the United States. Why? Because they are no longer financially feasible. Another interesting comment that was raised was that we're really good. And our Catholic school teachers are so much better. Well, if that's the case, again, why are we closing? Why are we forced to close our school? If we offered such a tremendous educational program that was flawless, wouldn't the world be flocking to our doors? The reality is they're not. People see us as an alternative. Why? Because sometimes they do not believe that we have the best teachers. Why? Because we pay them so much less. When you start paying your employees less than their counterparts in another industry or another company, what do you find? Well, the research in business says very simply, if the perception is that you have inferior people working in your establishment, the end product will in fact be inferior. When we look at the facilities in many of our Catholic schools, what do we find? They are far less than the public school counterparts. Logic, for many people in the public, will simply say, well, if they don't have the facilities, why would someone go to work for them? And I know that you'll sit back and say, well, it's for the greater glory of God. And I agree with you, but the reality is that oftentimes we do not have the luxury, because of our financial conditions, to be able to reward people. When people talk about, well, let's raise the starting salary for teachers, that's fine. But if you raise starting salaries for teachers, what about the teacher that's been there for 10, 15, or 20 years? Are you also going to raise their salary? Because otherwise, that salary scale that you create will be pretty much meaningless. And then what you will be doing is throwing out the salary scale altogether and saying, I'm going to be paying you what I think you're worth. The reality is that's what's done in the private sector in business. They might have a base salary, but if they think that you are a highly skilled, highly competent person that they want to bring into their organization, they will pay you accordingly. In many of the charter schools in the United States, there was just an article that was written in the Washington Post that talked about the salaries of some charter school administrators. We're talking about salaries of $250,000, $275,000, $325,000. Now, are they going to get the best and the brightest for their money? You better believe they will, and they will hold them accountable. Oftentimes we are reluctant to hold our teachers accountable. Why? Because they're really not getting paid that much. And then we threw on all these extra duties and forget that people have lives outside. How do they balance those? And many of our teachers, especially our younger teachers, have second jobs. Many of our teachers are also trying to go back to school. If you're looking at developing a merit pay system, is it difficult? Absolutely. Because what it requires is a meaningful and honest supervision and evaluation process. The problem is that most administrators are not prepared to evaluate their teachers on that level. During the course on supervision evaluation, one of the things that you'll hear is, how do you supervise people and then evaluate them? How do you help make them a better teacher? Some of you referenced Daniel Pink and his concepts and his presentations on motivation. And what he says is that you can give people all the money in the world, it's not going to make them a better teacher. Merit pay tries to say, if I give you a bonus, all I'm really doing is recognizing that you are going above and beyond. It really boils down to two issues. One, how do you evaluate your teachers? And then number two, how do you keep the best, most highly qualified teachers who are having the greatest impact on their students? Perhaps merit pay is not the answer, but I do believe that there must be some kind of recognition. Financially, does that help? Absolutely. Can we afford to do massive programs? Probably not in our schools, unless we totally rearrange our budgets and we get outside funding. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? Probably not. But the challenge for you is to devise a system within your school that recognizes the quality of teachers. Our current salary scale system basically allows a teacher to simply be average or slightly below average, but as long as they're not bad enough to get fired, they keep progressing along. They're getting the same raise as that teacher that works and stays up until 1 o'clock in the morning trying to find new and creative ways to reach the students, to motivate and energize their students, and make learning fun. When we talk about creating a school culture, how you financially reward your teachers, whether that's through assistance to go to professional development activities outside the school to help pay for additional degrees, or whether it's just an occasional bonus. How do you do that and recognize the best teachers? Merit pay has tried to do that. And as some of you said, one of the problems is our Catholic school administrators are not ready for it, and our Catholic school teachers are not prepared for that kind of scrutiny. And that's the truth. Because the most devastating thing that can happen to someone is when they're told that they are not valued, and that their value is perhaps less than someone else's. For many people, that's not an issue. And I'd love to say in all of our Catholic schools that we never have an issue with the quality of our instruction and with the pay scales that we've designed. But we have issues. How do we make our schools better? How do we improve the quality of education and reward those who are dedicating their lives to making our schools exceptional? Not just good, exceptional. Why? Because our mission says that we should do that. Our mission says that we are to bring students up, to help them develop the talents and gifts that they have. We also need to do that for our teachers. And we can do that by finding systems that will allow rewards of some type, or recognition is perhaps a better term, of those who are truly exceptional. And maybe that's the Teacher of the Year, and you assign a $1,000 stipend or gift bonus to that teacher. What does it do? If the criteria is clearly laid out and it's a fair process, it gives everyone an opportunity. And you can also do things like, say, if you're Teacher of the Year, you can only get it once every 5 years. But what it does is it gives people a little bit of motivation because they want the recognition. And the money helps. It allows them to do things that perhaps they would not be able to do. And it also can, not always, but can help develop a sense of loyalty to the institution. The challenge is to find that system. And I'm not a big fan of tying test scores automatically to a teacher's pay or the rehiring of an administrator. But I do believe that we have to take all the data into consideration when we are helping to make our schools exceptional. But one of the challenges, and one of you asked the question, then how do we make our schools sustainable? And one even said, well, do you think Dr. Murphy will tell us how we can sustain our schools? Yes. It starts with a good, strong, honest budget. It starts with a program of what we will call later in the course institutional advancement, where you are marketing your institution, you are selling the product that you make, which is the quality education. And you look to the students that have graduated from your institutions and become successful at the next level and beyond. How do we tell people how good we are? Catholic schools have been reluctant for years to tell people how good they are. We kind of sat back and said they will come to us because we are Catholic. The reality now is they're not coming because we are simply Catholic. Catholic families are opting for other forms of education. Some are going to charter schools, some are homeschooling. Some are going to public school. Why won't they bring their children to our schools? And if you'll ask them, some will say, I'm not sure it's as good. And when you ask the next question, why? Well, look at your teacher pay scale. Look at your facilities. The only way you're going to be able to help your school maintain its feasibility and sustain success is looking for additional sources of revenue. And it will not come from selling pizza or wrappers or wrapping paper or other sorts of little minor fundraising ideas. Now, you might be able to get $10,000, but I firmly believe, and the research is there that proves that that cannot sustain an institution. I know some schools that have sold a lot of candy and a lot of wrapping paper, and yet they closed. Why? Because those dollars were not enough to sustain it. We have to look beyond it. We have to look to foundations. We have to look to things like planned giving. We have to look at how we market our institutions. If we do that, there is a much greater likelihood that we will, in fact, be able to sustain our schools and provide our teachers with a salary commensurate with their experience and their commitment to our institutions. I hope these thoughts help. And I hope they provoke some additional conversations. Because if we're going to solve the problem, it must be that we are solving the problem, not just one person. The principal of the school cannot simply wave the magic wand and make everything better. If you're to develop a meaningful merit pay system, you need to involve your faculty. Have them talk about it, dialogue. Don't simply just mandate it from the top. Can it work? Yes, and I've seen it work. Has it created some issues? Yes. But if merit pay is not the solution for your school, what are you doing to help your teachers realize how good they are? The budget is one area, the financial component. But what else are you doing? Again, I hope these thoughts help. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. I appreciate it and have a great day.